Welcome, patrons. So for Dragon Age Day this year, BioWare released what they called an in-game cinematic for Dragon Age Dreadwolf. It's been kind of a weird release for me because I'm actually super excited about it, while others are pretty lukewarm. I'm not here to say you can't be underwhelmed, but at least I want to share why I'm excited about it. So buckle up for me to talk too much, and let's go over the cinematic titled, Who is the Dreadwolf? Also, I know you guys want me to talk about the short stories, because there was a new one released this year, but frankly, I'm waiting to do them much later down in the line, so there's a link down below if you want to go read that, and we're going to go on to the cinematic. The purpose. I think an important question to ask is, what is this? So the blog post they put out states, we wanted to close out the year with a little treat to celebrate Dragon Age Day in our own way by sharing a key cinematic from the game. We will get to the first part of that sentence in a bit, but what I want to focus on is the key cinematic from the game. I've seen some people disagree with calling this a cinematic, expecting like a cutscene or something, but these type of animations date back from the series' beginning. Literally, actually, when you start a new game of Dragon Age Origins, it is the first thing you see. Dragon Age 2 also has a style of cinematic much more commonly, bookending each act and the DLC of the games. Mark of the Assassin does, Legacy doesn't. Whatever, doesn't matter. But with this new release, it now makes Inquisition the outlier, as this type of art is now in-lore media seen as Solas' murals only, and not some animated cinematic. There's also this theory I've seen from time to time that the cinematics we have seen in the previous games are also murals that Solas has painted somewhere. That doesn't actually have anything to do with this, but I've had a couple people ask me to talk about this theory, and I've just haven't really because I don't know what else to say on it. It's kind of neat. Anyway, this cinematic is showing a return to the previous storytelling from the past games, or at least how it's told, as we don't really get a good taste of what the story is yet. The question now is, where is this used in the game? I've seen a few theories running around, some saying that this will play before we fight Solas at the end of the game, others saying that we played at the start to help set up the player to the world, or even played when the main character gets hired on by Varric, or something similar. Now, if I were to cast my vote, I would say this does very much feel like a setup to a story rather than something that's shown much later in the game. I would think that the information that Varric says we would know by the time we are fighting Solas, but I think it would also make more sense for BioWare to release something that is shown much earlier on in the player's experience so as not to spoil much. We might honestly be looking at the Dreadwolf version of the opening of Dragon Age Origins cutscene. So then, I think the other purpose to analyze is, why show this on Dragon Age Day? So this is honestly the most we've ever really been shown on Dragon Age Day, honestly, along with a short story with some new posters for the Netflix and even commissioning pieces of companion portraits from artists in the community. So why show it at all? Before this came out, months ago, BioWare kept talking about seeing us later in the year and hyping up something coming later on. Because their first trailer was shown at the Game Awards, we all sort of expected that to come into play, and it just kind of became solidified into fans' minds, so later the year went on as well, and they kept referencing things coming later in their blog posts, so we're like, Game Awards, Game Awards, Game Awards. Well, now it's later, and the blog post has the first part of the sentence, close out this year. With the Game Awards having come and gone with nothing new, people are disappointed that over 6 months of hype is just the cinematic. If I'm being frank, I do wonder if something happened behind the scenes. Like, maybe there was a plan to show something, but something got pushed back, or something didn't work, there wasn't room in the show, I don't know. It might honestly be that EA just wants to market this game on their own terms rather than pay for a spot in an award show, and they didn't tell BioWare about it until they already said something in their marketing in, June or whatever that first blog post was. This might be the best they can give us before they start ramping up for the official marketing circuit. And this is also why it's stuff that's largely covered in past games. It's a safe option to show fans. It also allows them wiggle room should something need to be changed before release. Now, I too wish for a big reveal trailer we have all been wishing for, with companions and story beats and release date, but I don't think this video deserves some of the comments I've been saying. Honestly, I think there's a larger conversation here on how COVID and related world events have caused a large-scale traumatic response in the general populace, or as you might have heard it referred to by others as, why is everyone so angry suddenly? But to be fair, the Dragon Age community has been living on breadcrumbs for the better part of a decade, so, we've been pretty good up until now just to be excited over a whiff of Dragon Age 4, and now that it's honestly closer than ever, we can basically taste it, and we know that Alpha is actually playable out in the world right now. We need kind of a little bit more meat to tide us over till its release. But to say that this trailer shows us nothing new is factually wrong. In fact, the problem with the cinematic is that it just casually throws around lore and lore conversations that I think just went over a lot of people's heads, or to those that caught it, they just kind of shrug and think, perhaps I missed something where that was confirmed, or well, yeah, that's been the accepted theory for almost 10 years, BioWare, get your fucking shit together. So of course it shows that. So okay, let's dive in a little deeper into what just gets me excited about the cinematic, and hopefully some of my enthusiasm can be passed on to you. Voiceover and music. This is admittedly the least excited part of the video, but let's talk about what you actually hear. Now, the entire video is narrated by good old Varric, giving a rundown on who Solas is and what he did and what his current goals are, at least how it's understood by Varric. And then at the end he says, "And we are the only ones who can stop it," we being the new player character and companions, and probably Varric too. Now, there are two things I want to point out from Varric's monologue. First is that Solas is referred to as the God of Lies. Now, this is one of those wordings that's kind of a bit hard to search for after the fact that it's been released, but that's just a really unusual way to just describe him. Past games have used betrayal or trickery to describe his realm of godhood, and given that Solas is just kind of not a great liar, it's just an odd choice for me. Now, as soon as I said he's not a great liar, a bunch of you probably just said, "Oh hell no, what is this woman on about?" And I talk about this in my video on the guy, but while Solas is extremely dishonest and manipulative, him actually saying something that is not in some form technically true is rare. And like the one time it happens, it's actually really awkward.
After our time in Halam Shiral, I understand why. I had forgotten how I missed court intrigue.
You missed court intrigue? When were you at court?
Oh, well, never directly, of course. An elven apostate is rarely invited to speak with empresses and kings.
So I guess people calling him the Elven God of Lies is just easier than to say like Elven God of Manipulation or something, but even that I think just kind of sounds cooler, and maybe they should have gone with that. It would just make more sense to me. Unless they're trying to tie him back to the Forgotten Ones. See, the Dreadwolf was said to be able to hang out with both groups of elven gods, the good gods in Dalish lore and the evil gods in Dalish lore, known as the Forgotten Ones. Now, ironically, the Forgotten Ones are largely absent from the game so far, with the biggest piece we have gotten from them being like a codex entry in the DLC Jaws of Hakon. We don't even know how many there are technically, but we have at least 3 names, and in the codex entry for Fen'Harel that dates back all the way to Origins, there are actually 4 different domains that these gods supposedly rule over. Sort of. It's not like it's complicated. But while lies is not actually one of those words, it does seem to fit more when lined up with the rest of the group in this sentence. Now, part of me wonders if we learn more about the game, the line is setting up that while Solas was a rebel to the main elven pantheon, he also manipulated and lied to the Forgotten Ones. Perhaps to them, he was the evil one of their story. And as we find out more, perhaps we start siding with the Forgotten Ones and thinking Solas is just the god of lies and a big old asshole. Now, the other line that caught my attention was that Varric mentioned that he locked away the elven gods. Now, why that interests me, I'll get to later, because it's honestly really less the words and more the imagery shown when that is said. But let's not forget the music backing the cinematic. So far carried from, honestly, all the trailers we have seen from Dragon Age 4 is that the sound has been really layered. Like there are like these sad man violins for when Solas is first talked about, which tracks with his main theme, honestly.
A thoughtful mage obsessed with dreams, but long ago.
And then when he turns into Fen'Harel, there's almost like a wolf howl, which I just think is a wonderful touch.
The Dreadwolf, ancient elven god of...
And there's even like these little sound effects for the magic and all that, but 2 things caught my ear, I suppose. First, when the Golden City turns black, there is this sound that is just... It is the Blight. I just can't describe it better than that. But even though we can tell by the imagery that the Golden City is being blighted, we also hear it, which is a nice addition.
Imprisoned them and created a veil that split our world from the raw magic of the Fade.
Another thing I wanted to bring up with the music is that the tune you hear when Solas is trying to take down the veil is very similar to the Inquisition main theme.
The Now, he wanted to tear down that veil and destroy the world. And we're the only ones.
It's not quite there. Maybe it's in like a minor key rather than a major key. I'm not musical, to be honest. I just watched a couple of music videos and now I know what a leitmotif is, and probably going to be really annoying to anyone that is musical. But I just want to believe that they use a version of the Inquisition theme where the veil is being torn, because I just would find that really cool. Sort of like a, hey, remember when the sky helped you fix the sky? You would not fucking believe what is happening now, my man. And finally, we end on like, I guess a banjo sound. Again, I'm not musical. I don't know what instrument this actually is.
Who can stop him?
But the rest of the sound matching the imagery just so well. I want to say that the banjo riff thing might be representing the new game, if not our new player character or group. And like, to me, who again doesn't know anything about music, it's very grassroots sounding, like, is the best way to describe it. Like if Bagpipes of Origins was the warden and I don't even know what Dragon Age 2 was, horns or something was like the Kirkwall gang, then the large orchestra was Inquisition with the massive organization that it was, then maybe musically the smaller band of banjos might be who we are in Dreadwolf. Someone homegrown, not really rare, but still playing a defiant little tune to ourselves. Imagery. Alright, time for my favorite part of the video. So I'm going to go in order of what we see, labeling them as Solas, Fen'Harel, the Golden City, and Sunder. They sort of blend into each other too, so it's a little more complicated than that, but whatever. Solas. Okay, so it's not like too much to talk about right at the front. It's Solas, who looks just like he does on his tarot card. Now the staff itself isn't actually in the series, with the closest being like this model that is commonly used throughout Dragon Age Inquisition. The model is also used for the staff Heart of Pride that you can unlock in Trespasser. I honestly wouldn't have much to say on this part were it not for Cal, who I feel like comes up on a lot of these videos because she's great. But Cal noticed that the double sun imagery comes up in various places in Elven ruins. Ironically, one of them is actually right under where Gilder Thalon sits in Trespasser, so thankfully I have a lot of imagery of this one thing. But other than this, I don't have anything like solid for you. There is an importance of suns and Thetis, particularly in Elven culture, like Elgranon was supposed to be born of the sun. The symbol of the Chantry is a sun. The Dragon Age, like the time frame of an age in the lore, was supposed to be the Sun Age. And I guess suns are suspicious in Thetis, and we have seen sun imagery in the Dragon Age 4 marketing, but I kinda can't tell you what it means. Now, Katura from my Discord also has an interesting theory. They had found and collected a bunch of images of faces with suns. Now, their tinfoil is that the elves took a head of a titan, walled it off, made it tranquil, and built Arlathan on top of it, which is why it sort of looks like a skull later on in the cinematic. Now, while I have no proof of the skull theory, there is an alarming amount of faces or eyes within suns in Thetis. Now, my other idea for, like, the sun's meaning could be that it's supposed to be a subtle hint that Solas is holy or godlike, and later on it turns into a proper halo. And then what's in the center of the fade is like whatever made the elves into gods, perhaps even heaven itself, like most of Thetis believes. Now, this idea actually also intersects with Katura's idea, however, as there is some evidence that part of the way to like have the power of a god was to kill a titan, so perhaps at the heart of the fade is just a really powerful titan heart. Fen'Harel. So we go from Solas and transition into Fen'Harel. The dual suns are then eclipsed by a large wolf head, which I'm using that word very literally, as the background then has these rays radiating out from the wolf, similar to how in real eclipses you can see the sun's corona. Now, not much to say on Solas and the big Fen'Harel itself. I guess I don't really see the sides bits here are blight, as it just kind of moves differently when it shows later on in the video. But it does match imagery from earlier versions of the big bad wolf himself. So it could be the blight, I guess. I'm not sure, honestly. I guess I'm just not feeling blight about it, because the blight is almost pure black later on, while the wolf's fur is textured. It looms and is dangerous, but for some reason other than the blight. I don't know, it doesn't speak blight to me. Now, the focus to me, again, is what was the sun and what now might be the moon. It's at the center of the wolf's head, and other than the fact that Solas and Mythal, who was the goddess of the moon, are connected, perhaps literally now, I'm not really sure what to say about it. It might even be more than the moon, as it transitions into what looks like to be the center of the Fade, where all the magic in the world is, sort of. Honestly, I guess I just have to say that this suns to moon, to the middle of the head, to the Fade, it just seems important, and I don't know how. I feel like it is, I just don't know what, and I feel like it's one of those things that they're going to tell us later, and I don't know what to do about it right now. The Golden City. Now, before I go hog wild with the best bits of this part of the cinematic, I do want to touch on the return of the tambourine. If we reference the old mural, sure enough, the two head shapes that are part of the mural from the most recent VGA trailer line up with the ones still lit up. Much of the structure of the tambourine is still present as well, given the dotted line that I believe represented the veil and Blight being held within. And this is why I feel like this small bit is so important. When we first saw the tambourine, we were all so sure it was related to the old gods, because the number of dark bells matched with the number of blights. Now we have an updated version that includes iconography that is clearly elven, and right here is some of the most solid links we have that the elven gods are indeed related to the old gods in some way. I find that incredibly exciting, and nobody fucking else does. Sort of, there are people. The rest of the inside bit, I'm not really sure what to think. The lines make me think of a magical glyph, which would work given that the inside of the veil is basically just raw magic. But the fact that the double sun's moon is technically part of this bright orb in the middle makes me unsure of just what this is. The way the circles overlap reminds me of the infamous circle mosaic from Dinan Hadin in the Emerald Graves. The problem is that the one in the video actually has more circles. While it's more obvious later on when the veil is being cracked open, if you look closely, you can see the two other circles alongside the first pair. While it may still relate to Dinan Hadin mosaic, to this day, none of us actually know what that even means to begin with. There are theories that it actually is a diagram to how the world worked pre-veil, but keep in mind that this ruin is actually Dalish. It's not Elven. Well, not ancient Elven, it is Elven, whatever. For the rest of the glyph, I looked into various things in the game, like when you cast magic or whatnot, but nothing really looked like what's in this cinematic. The only possible connection I can make is with the Solas starting tarot card. Now, it's not exact, but there has always been like these little symbols on the card that no one can really place a meaning for. There's a great write-up on Reddit from a sadly now deleted user that dives deep into the symbols, placing the imagery in various other murals and elven sources, but they only really had a guess to the 4 dots. Well, looking back to this, there are 4 circles around the golden orb. Maybe it's nothing, but it's all I have. But a major focus here is that locked away with the gods is the Golden City, which a major theory from the Time of Origins is that it's Arlathan. I almost want to say this is confirmed, but it's not like they say it outright, so, you know. This information could also be used to place where the cinematic is. The mountains are obvious, which then narrows down the possible places this is set. Skyhold is actually a contender here, as its elven name translates to the place where the sky is held up/back. So that's been a theorized place for Solas to have done the locking ritual. It could also be that this is closer to the mountain range than Arlathan Forest, given that there seems to be like this crater in the back that I've been reading as like where the city was and is now being locked away, where it once stood. But that could just be me reading too much into it. Now, there is a much larger conversation here about where the Blight comes in. Because per stories, the Blight did not spread until the Magisters broke into the Golden City. During the animation, when the Golden City turns black, assuming this is the moment when the Magisters broke in, the bells of the tambourine disappear and the Fade turns black, looking like it comes for the Black City itself. From here, we know the Blight begins, and one by one the bells begin to fade until we get the tambourine we see in the first mural. So then, I have 2 questions. One, when the Magisters broke into the Golden City and let loose the Blight onto the world, did they also, loosen whatever spell Solas put on the gods as they no longer are connected to the main veil? I guess just more details on how the elven gods were imprisoned, because it just looks like each of them were in their own little pocket dimension that fed off the larger whole of the Fade, similar to the Crossroads. And 2, in the mural where we first saw Moonhead and Beetle, do we only see those 2 because they're the only 2 still alive? Were the souls of the old gods and Evanurst linked, if not the same, and when an archdemon was killed, they were killed as well? Are these the only 2 elven gods left alive? Was part of Solas' prison a sort of death trap for the Evanuris, that if they were freed or escaped, they would also be fed into like this blight system and killed as the monsters they were? I don't know, but I think we'll find out in the next game. Okay, so the part that I've been obsessing with this video is the goddamn icons at the bottom that I feel like I'm going crazy because no one else seems as excited about this as I do, and like, whatever. I mean, that's not true. There are people excited, but not enough. Anyway, if you have watched enough of my content, you should recognize some of these. Actually, all but 2. But if you are new here, let me take you on a very shortened, condensed journey of what these are. In 2015, Trespasser was released and featured some strange statues around the ancient elven areas. 2 on top of these, like, odd, robish, dragon-adjacent statue-looking things, and 2 on top of an alluvian. We have since dubbed these Moonhead, Sun, and Horns. As a warning, I've given all these stupid little shapes like names, and I'm going to be using them a lot, and I'm so sorry. It just kind of happens. I didn't mean for them to have dumb names, but here we are. Now, while it came up in conversation, the idea at the time was that Moonhead was Mythal, given that it was located in the Lyrium Processing Center that we believe belonged to Mythal. From there, some went to Elgranon, given that he was connected to the sun, and who the fuck was Horns was really anybody's guess. Now, it was like that for years until I got a message from Cal and made a video on it. For the entire story on that, you're just going to have to watch the video, but basically she found an unused game asset of more heads. The most interesting one I dubbed Triad. See, this one was the most interesting because the head shape was incredibly similar to the strange statue of Falandin and Urthemiel we see in Dragon Age Origins. Okay, so like Origins is like a whole bit that I'm going to dive into a little bit later on, but we're going to just put a pin on it and continue on with the strange head story first. Anyway, Triad was now a strange head, along with Moonhead, Sun, and Horns. I also should say, I get I'm calling them heads, but they're most likely just strange masks. Head just kind of has stuck and is now my lingo, I'm very sorry. But anyway, theories came left and right about them, and when a new mural was released, this time focusing on Moonhead and a new head shape that we called Beetle. Many people at this time also connected Beetle back to the Mosaic and Trespasser, which at the time I was kind of uncertain of, and I actually even missed in my video, but I'm now completely convinced it's the same person. Again, more on that later. So to jump to this, we now have 2 more heads, the exact amount we need for either the locked away old gods or the Evanuris, if not both. Now, mostly because I like completing sets rather than them actually needing names, I'm dubbing the new 2 Nib and Line. Welcome to the party, kids. Okay, so I've done a lot of theorizing on who is what head shape before, and while as of writing this, I do have my own personal head shape bingo card filled out. I want to throw out everything I have collected to try and pin down who they are, so that you can decide what feels right for you, and then I'll tell you what I think. Dragon Age Origin masks. So in Dragon Age Origins, there is actually a collection of masks associated with the Evanuris around the Dalish camp. Now, clicking on 2 actually gives you some codex entries. The 2 we have solid connections for are Junet and Elgranon, but there are actually 3 others in the game just sort of thrown around in random levels. One looks a lot like a Hala, the other I would describe as perhaps rabbit adjacent, I suppose, and the other is just this weird bug thing. And the weird bug looking one is weirdly enough used in a lot of Templar Sacred Ashes areas, which later on in Inquisition is connected to Mythal. So it is possible that Mythal does have her own head shape, but it's not among the cinematic because she died and was not actually locked away. Dragon Age Origins statues. So as I've talked about previously, there are 2 statues just lying about the entire game. One that Tamlin identifies as Falandin, and the other that, through a very long series of explanations that I won't go into again for the sake of time, is connected to Urthemiel, the archdemon that dies in Dragon Age Origins. While the 2 are different, they both share a very similar head shape, and therefore I believe is the one free space in this lineup. However, there is one more weird statue I'd like to point out. So floating around in various levels is this thing. I have no idea what it is, but the head shape has a passing resemblance to Sun. As this statue has like almost no connections to anything, I don't even know how to tie it in, other than we might have seen it before. Trespasser assets. Of course, the golden statues and the hidden assets are in this, clue lineup. There has never actually been a solid association with any of the gods, so I'm just going to show you these all now, and that's all the details I can give you. Elven mosaics. I don't actually mean the cut content, but rather the ones that are in-game depictions of the gods. While most of the gods look bald, there are some with things on their head, but Solas is particularly interesting to me for reasons I'll get into later when I make my own guesses. DA4 marketing. And of course the images that we've come out over the past few years, all having to do with Moonhead and Beetle. I've talked a lot about these images, so for a deeper dive, just go check out those videos, but they sort of kind of don't really matter in this moment, only if you want a deeper understanding of the history. The Darkspawn symbol. So for a while now, the Darkspawn actually have their own symbol that they use to make shrines and paint on their shields and stuff like that. And it kind of resembles Beetle's head shape, although in the Darkspawn version, the two sides are uneven. But the image painted on the shield looks incredibly mask-like, honestly. Dragon Age 2 bits and bobs. By this section, I kind of just mean the crown the main figure of the idol wears and the concept art from when Hawk and the gang travel down into the deep roads to find the idol. None of this is actually, associated with any gods or anything, but that's definitely Triad. Chantry and the Venatori. So if you watch my video on the Red Lyrium and the Idol, there's a small section where I point out that a lot of people see similarities between the Chantry's favorite pointy crown symbol and the Venatori's love for the similar point, and the Idol's crown. Now, while seemingly unrelated, if perhaps the legend is true and Andraste is the reincarnated soul of Dumat, then that shape could be important to her followers, as well as being important to Corypheus, the head priest of Dumat, and his lackeys. Eighth Old God and Dumat. This is less evidence, but more like an addendum, I suppose. This only sort of fits, but I'm still unconvinced that the Evanurus and the Old Gods are the exact same people. But I think there is room for an extra head that would represent Mythal and her associated Old God. Mythal actually has a connection to Dumat per a codex entry. As Dumat is one of the 7 known archdemons, it could be that whatever the archdemon were to the Evanurus, Mythal was locked away too, then making 8 Old Gods. There are rumors in the lore of an 8th Old God, so the possibility is there, but at this time we have so little to go on, I'm just going to continue assuming that Dumat is in the lineup for the symbols, and there is no 8th Old God. My guess. So after collecting everything, my personal guess is that while the symbols represent the Elven gods, them being the same number as the Old Gods, and BioWare now bringing Triad head shape back into the actual lore rather than cut content, I think they might be both. Maybe not the same person, but this symbol represents both. I also want to add, normally for these videos, I'm basically live on my editing computer until I'm done with a video and don't look at other creators' videos, but this time around I just kind of have a few real life things popping up that have made me take a little bit more time. Now, being curious, I wanted to see what others have said, and I'm frankly shocked by how many of people are saying that Beetle is Falandin. I guess it could be. I'm not saying I'm 100% right, even though I'll be honest, I'm kind of feel like I am. But why is Falandin the important one in this lineup? Not only is he bigger, but he's the only one who's right side up. Everyone else is like this upside down with the orientation towards the circle. This position is such a leadership position, and from what we know, that's just not really Falandin. Plus, BioWare basically told us who Falandin was. I mean, no disrespect to other creators, but I just honestly, I cannot say that this is Falandin. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't mean any disrespect. I just cannot get behind Falandin. So, okay, I think I have a better guess for the Elven God lineup than the Old God lineup, so let's start with the Elven so I can just feel smart for a second. Now, the largest bubble, Beetle, is Elgernon. He is the leader of the gods, so it makes sense that he is in the middle. It would also make the horned man in the mural Elgernon, at least someone associated with him, perhaps. Maybe it's not Elgernon, but someone, I don't know. It's an Elgernon association, not necessarily the god. I don't know. Gillenon is then Moonhead, given that she has been set up the most in media so far. It would also make sense for her to be the farther end of the line, given that she is the last known addition to the Elven Pantheon. Now, Falandin is the only one I think we can be sure of, apparently. I'm the only one that thinks that, though, but it has to be Triad, given previous installments, and it's almost a free space here in my mind. But that leaves the others open, and really not a lot to go on. So from there, I looked at the Dragon Age origin mask. Since Elgernon is already taken, that would leave Juné, and honestly, I've already been calling the shape horns, and Juné's mask has horns, so we're gonna make that Juné. And then Solas was the final blow to unlocking this puzzle for me. In the mosaic of her, she has this crown that looks like Sun's head, even down to the right number of spikes. With her filled into that slot, it now makes her mirror to Juné, which is also her partner's place. Now, I should say I don't actually know if they were lovers, but you can pair up all the Evanurus. Elgranon doesn't really get a partner because Mythal is dead by the time the gods were locked up, sort of. You know what I mean if you played Inquisition. But from there, you get Andrul as Nib and Dirthamin as Line. Now, unfortunately, I don't have anything solid to make Andrul and Dirthamin's make sense. Honest to God, all I have is that Dirthamin's Valison sort of has a line going down the middle. Maybe. And Andrul is the goddess of the hair, so it has bunny ears, and if I'm being honest, that is dog shit reasoning. Just dog shit. However, there is one more shape resemblance I've been kind of holding back, mostly because I don't know how related it could be. But Nib looks a lot like Isana's song staff from the Inquisition. In keeping with my current lineup, Andrul honestly has the biggest claim to being in the Deep Rose. She has legends of her making armor and weapons of the void, whatever that is, but it's like we know it's in the deep, and she's known to be a great hunter. Now, the Evanuris did kill a Titan at one point. We have a mural of it. We know that. So if, like many hunters do, she took a symbol of something she killed and made it a part of her iconography, and there is already a theorized war between the elves and Titans, and maybe the Nib shape is just her battle trophy. So yeah, now back to dog shit reasoning. Let's talk about the old god lineup. Now again, I think Triad is the free space taking Arthemiel's spot. Now in previous murals, the good old tambourine, which I think represents the Veil at the time of at least Inquisition, has two bright bells, which I believe represent the two old gods still locked away, Razakael and Lusicon. Now in a perfect world, the Elven lineup and the old god lineup would make sense, so I'm thinking that the old god of mystery fits better with Gillenon and the old god of night being Elgranon. And that right there is an interesting connection already, where it almost seems like the old gods are foils to what the Evanuris represent. How is beauty connected to the dead? Sun to the night? Very common animal to the Dalish to mysteries. Now it's not perfect, but I sort of see some logic in there. Sort of. And I've sat here and tried to puzzle out the rest, but nothing really feels as solid as the Elven lineup to me. So just for like locking in the bingo card guess, I'm going to go with Razakael as Andrul, as she went mad and Razakael's the god of chaos. And like maybe there's something like, Huns are supposed to be tight controlled things and, chaos is just going mad with power. I don't know. Solas is Andral, as she is the goddess of births, and Dral is the god of slaves, and maybe that's related. I don't know. And then June with Toth because fire. Maybe like fire creates, fire destroys. I don't know. And then that leaves Dirthamin with Dumont, which I guess sort of works because Dumont's the god of silence and then god of secrets. Now, frankly, I do not feel good about the old god lineup, as everything sort of conflicts with other parts of the lore and connections to elven gods. If you look up posts about pairing up the old gods and the Evanuris, never in a million years would you get the lineup I just created, but that seems to be how it's lining up. I am perhaps a bit too confident in my Elven God lineup, mostly because not only are partners mirrored with one another, but also the eldest of Elgranon's children are closest to him. This lineup of the gods just feels a lot more coherent than some of the other lineups I've seen. And I honestly, I don't mean to poo-poo others' work here. I could totally be wrong. I'm just admitting that I am currently convinced that this is correct and that I'm right, and I'll be very sad when BioWare eventually proves me wrong. So please let me know about what your ancient god bingo card is. Do you think it's only the elven gods, only the old gods, or perhaps both? And either way, who is what symbol? Let me know below, and I'm sure one of us will get it right. One of us will get it, and we'll all be proud of you. So, okay, with all that out of the way, let's take a moment to bring back the most confusing mural from Trespasser. Now, we have yet to really be able to say for certain what this meaning is, and with the new information we have, there are some interesting details. So yeah, I don't want to do like a whole deep dive on this thing because I'm not going to be able to say anything that new that I haven't said in the past 5 years, but I do want to point out that we now have the gods in the same layout as these like blue and gold lamps. And things just kind of seem important. If my bingo card is correct, Elgranon, Janae, and Solas have something in common, while Andrul, Gillenon, Dirthamin, and Falandin have their own thing in common. But I imagine that the colors have to do with the orbs on the side of the mural. Blue is likely lyrium, but we have never really had a strong meaning to the gold. One can assume fade, but then why isn't the fade itself in the mural gold? And does this mean that like the gods have different preferred power sources? Perhaps these are the ways each of the gods achieve godhood. Some by killing a titan in blue, and others doing God knows what in the fade. I don't know. Maybe as titans and lyrium are connected to the unmoving physical world, and the Fade with spirits and the movable, perhaps this is more of a statement on which side of the world, like the physical realm or the Fade realm, the gods like to live and work in. Either way, I have no hard facts, but I do want to raise the question. Now, another thing I want to talk about why I have you all captured, let's revisit the Elven mosaic with who I now believe to be Beetle. Why is he chained up and bleeding lyrium? Now, the related codex entry talks about how the Evanuris are not gods, and the place that you are currently at was designed to unteach their lies. Is this someone chaining up Elgranon to try and strip him of his godhood? Which then, if he is bleeding blue, why is his bell and the other Solas mural gold? Does this even matter? I don't know. Oh, also this doesn't really fit into anything, but if you go frame by frame in the YouTube video, there's like these 2 frames, exactly 2 frames before the explosion in the veil. They're a little funky. I'm honestly leaning towards that this is just a graphical error, but I at least want to throw them up here in case someone had a better idea than me. Sunder. Let's begin this section with talking about the orb that has been representing the Fade. First is that the dotted line that we believe to be the veil is now gone, which given Solas' goal is a dub, but more than that, the center is glowing and magical and the Golden City is gone. I think the main question here is that I feel like this whole thing implies that there's a core to the Fade, and it's not the Golden City. It's something brighter, perhaps even older. Now, at first I thought this core was reacting to the dagger that Solas is holding, as the cracks seem to be coming from it, but kind of looking at it closer and with it being animated, I think that's not quite right. The image is more three-dimensional, and this is supposed to be depicting a cracked sphere rather than the flat circle that we've been looking at. Which, that is actually a really interesting choice. I don't mean that derogatory, but given all these murals we have so far have been very flat, this is kind of the first 3D object we've had. Like, not quite. There's a little bit of depth, but this is the most depth I've felt in one of these mural-looking pieces. Now, other than that, I think the biggest thing to focus on is what Solas is holding. Probably the biggest idea I've seen floating around is that this is the idol. You see, in Tevinter Night, Solas calls the idol his, and has also shown that it's basically a magical switchblade. And while I do like the theory, and it's something I'm leaning towards, there is one important factor that I feel like keeps getting overlooked. It's blue! It glows blue. That is just straight up blue. Frankly, the only thing in this entire series that has that hue of blue is lyrium. So either we are about to be introduced to a new substance, or he has, like, the anti-idol. Like, the good version to whatever the idol is. Now, alternatively, it could be that Solas knows how to fix the blight, and he has somehow healed the idol. You can make out, like, a circle hilt, which the idol does sport a circular top, but, like, the idol is pretty big, I think, and, like, I don't know how you'd be able to hold it up like he's holding it, and you would also think that you'd be able to see some of the figures, unless the blade is hidden within, like, the red lyrium or something, or, like, healing it took away the figures somehow. Which, casual reminder, the idol exploded and the figures came back. So, if that means you heal it and the figures are gone, then that means the figures are highly blight related. Okay. I don't know what to do with that information. I'm almost leaning towards this being just like a mirrored version of the idol, but instead of red lyrium, it's blue. So whatever the red lyrium idol is to red lyrium, this thing is to blue. Which also comes from Titans, so maybe it's like a Titan heart? Is this like a Titan heart shard? Now, I would be doing you a disservice if we didn't talk about the weapons in the Legends of Fen'Harel. See, all the way back in Origins, the Codex of Fen'Harel mentions the story on how he tricked the Evanuris and the Forgotten Ones. Now, there are different variations in the series, but the basics is that he had a blade that could stop the war between the Evanuris and the Forgotten Ones, and using this blade, he tricked them both into their prisons. Evanuris in the heavens, which we can see here being locked away in the Fade, and the Forgotten Ones in the Void. So I want to end you all with this. We see that locking away the Evanuris might have something to do with the Blight. We can't be certain, but loosening their chains led to the Blight being released. And now he's threatening to take down the Veil and return the world to order, and there is some evidence towards the Double Blight. I don't know how I feel about Double Blight, to be honest. But we have heard jack shit about the Forgotten Ones. They were locked away too. What happened to them? And if the Evanuris were locked away with the Blight, what on earth were the Forgotten Ones locked away with? Where are Darenthal and Naris and Gelderon? And that, dear patrons, is all that I have to say about the new cinematic. Maybe. I just feel like I had a lot to say, and I'm not sure if I even got it all, but please let me know what you think of everything down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @Gilderthon on Twitter or send a PM to user Galenon on Reddit. The rest, you're all.